This week on the Destination Angler.
As humans, we have to have that like human contact, right? So the third day, packers have left. I mean, their third day, they're going to be coming in, later in the afternoon. And I haven't talked to anybody or anything for 3 days. And this poor backpacker's coming in by himself, and I'm like, hey, how you doing, man? Thought thought it was crazy, probably. I'm like, where are you going, man? What are you doing? Because you're like, you want that contact, or just to talk to somebody. It's just it's a weird thing.
Yeah, no, I totally. He's looking at you, going, I think I just found Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah, it's like, who is this guy, man? Chill out.
Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haig. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler, brought to you by Trout Routes, the #1 fishing app, helping you find new trout waters so you spend less time on the road and more time doing what you love, trout fishing. And by Anglers Coffee, perfecting the coffee experience for the fly fishing community and anglers everywhere with small batch coffee delivered to your doorstep. It's darn near perfect. And by New England Nets, makers of handmade landing nets of exceptional quality that will complement your catch of a lifetime. Coming up on the Destination Angler, we're headed to Boise, Idaho and the wild and scenic Owyhee River. And then to Cuba, that's right, Cuba, to check out the amazing bone fishing, tarpon, and permit fishing, which is kind of like stepping back in time from what I hear. And be sure to backcast to catch the last episode of the Destination Angler on the Maine North Woods with expert guide Nate Tower. Encompassing over 3.5 million acres, these unspoiled waters are home to some of the best brook trout fishing in the world for the venturing angler. Hey, and remember to hit that subscribe button to catch all the Destination Angler episodes coming your way. And if you like the show, please tell a buddy. Want to be the first to hear about new episodes? Well, head on over to the Destination Angler website and become a subscriber. We'll keep you posted on all the new episodes coming your way, and you'll be registered to win a beautiful handmade New England landing net valued at $135. This week's winner is Gordon from Apex, North Carolina. Congratulations, Gordon, and thank you for listening. And today, our destination is the Kern River in the Southern Sierras, and our guest is Guy Jeans, owner of the Kern River Fly Shop, Kernville, California. Emerging from the shadow of Mt Whitney in Sequoia National Forrest, the Kern River flows over 165 miles through some of the most beautiful country in California and is home to 3 native species, the Golden Trout, the Kern River Rainbow, and the Little Kern Golden Trout. Hey, if you're looking for seclusion, this is where you go. The top 50 miles are roadless wilderness. Guy grew up as a surfer kid in Ventura, playing music and washing windows and guiding part-time on the Kern while sleeping in his truck. After selling his window washing business, he started his fly shop, and the rest is history. In addition to being a certified casting instructor, he writes fly fishing articles, teaches surf fishing classes along the California coastline. He's a fly designer for Solitude Fly Company and a musician in a ska band, and even hosts his own podcast called the Guy Jeans Podcast. And he's one heck of a nice guy, I must say. So today we break down the north, south, and tailwater sections of the Kern, along with tales of carp fishing, top flies and seasons, and some really entertaining stories. So let's dive in. Well, hey, Guy, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, man, it's going good. Good to hear your voice. How you been?
Been really good. We're getting lots of rain out here in California, that's for sure.
Man, what's up with California this year? It's been dry for how many years, and now what's your snowpack?
Our snowpack is like, we're pushing like 300% of normal, which is unbelievable. The lakes in California on reservoirs are all full
How about
already. And we haven't even had the snow melt yet. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that'll be the next thing all over the news, all that water coming down from the, when it starts to melt. I can't imagine.
Yeah. I've never seen it before. The 20 years that I've had my fly shop and guide service, I've never seen it with this big of a snowpack ever. And so it's some kind of record going on right now. It hasn't been this big of a snowpack since like the 1960s or something like that. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well, like how many feet of snow are in the high country? It's got to be 20 or 30 feet or more.
Oh my God! I don't know if you've heard of like the Mammoth area, the Mammoth Lakes area
Yeah,
in
sure.
Eastern Sierra, but like some of the lifts they can't even use because the snow is on top of the lifts.
Oh, it's over the top of the lift.
Over the
Oh,
top of the
really?
lifts, it's buried some of the lodges. I mean, it's unbelievable. We're talking like 30, 35 feet of snow. It's crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. We get all the pictures are all over social media, people carving these tunnels to get back into their homes. And
Yeah.
it's like surreal. So anyway, well, needless to say, you'll have a lot of water this year. You won't be going dry in September, I don't think.
It was getting brutal there, man. It was getting brutal. We've been in a serious drought all over California for many years. So it's like unbelievable to
Yeah.
see this much water in all the reservoirs. And our lake, Lake Isabella, is filling up, which is amazing.
How about that?
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh my gosh. I've done two shows with a guide up there. Last one I did on the McCloud River, and that's that Lake Shasta area. And Lake Shasta looked like a river. Like it didn't even look like a lake. It just looked like a little river at the bottom of this, where the lake used to be. So I guess, yeah, they're all filling up.
yeah, it's awesome.
All right, I got to ask you, what the heck is a ska band?
Well,
I'm from Indiana. I don't know these things.
yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Thanks for asking. Ska band is a type of music. I play in a ska band. I have a ska band, and the way I always describe it is kind of like faster reggae, and that's a good way that it's the beats. The rhythms are on the offbeat,
Yeah.
and we have a horn section. So we have a three-piece horn section: trumpet, trombone, and sax, and then
Nice.
keyboards and guitar and bass and drums. And I sing in it. And the band's called the Stoneflies, which is
There you go.
shameless plug out there.
Yeah.
But we play original music, original songs. We write. We're songwriters.
Really?
Been doing it for 35 years. Toured around all over the place with my ska band, and it's a lot of fun. It's like dance music, kind of upbeat type music that if you've never heard it before, bands that are similar are like, I don't know if you've heard of No Doubt with the singer. Her name is Gwen Stefani. She's a pretty famous gal. Yeah, that is on The Voice or was on The Voice. She was real influenced by ska from California and Orange County area. So a lot of their music, no doubt, has got that kind of undertone ska kind of vibe going on. But there's all kinds of bands that are influenced by ska. Even the Police. I don't know if you know the Police from England. You know the old. Yeah, they're kind of have a kind of a reggae ska undertone as well. So kind of similar to that stuff.
Okay. What do you play? What instrument?
I play the keyboards and sing in the band, believe it or not.
All right, I'll check you out, man. There you go, folks.
Yeah. Everything's on YouTube, Stoneflies. Yeah.
All right, very good. The other thing I want to ask you about, so you've fished all over the place, and you're into, I mean, trout fishing's your main game, I'm guessing, because you own a fly shop in the middle of trout country, but you also do bass and carp fishing and some other things, don't you?
Yeah, I'm totally into, whatever. The tug is the drug, they say. I love all species on a fly. Doesn't matter. I'm really into trout, of course. That's been my staple for many years. But I also guide for smallmouth and largemouth bass in the lower Kern River. And I also guide along the California coast for surf species like corbina, surf perch, striped bass, and that sort of thing.
Nice. And where do you go, without giving away your honey holes, like where do you go carp fishing?
Oh man, carp fishing is kind of a cool thing that happens on Lake Isabella. And so for those folks that don't know, I am located about an hour east of Bakersfield or 3 hours north of Los Angeles.
Okay.
And the Kern River, the North Fork of the Kern River, flows on the west side of Mt Whitney, and it flows down about 70 miles through the Golden Trout Wilderness, or I should say the Sequoia National Park, into the Golden Trout Wilderness, into the Sequoia National Forest, and then it flows down to my shop, which is right by Lake Isabella. And the river flows into Lake Isabella. That's the North Fork, and then we have the South Fork, which comes in on the other side of Lake Isabella. So there's two water sources that come into Lake Isabella. What happens every year, what's so cool, is they start filling up the lake, usually this time of year, and it fills up these areas that we call the flats, the Isabella Flats. And they're about a foot to 2 feet deep. And you can wade for many, many yards out into these flats and fly fish for carp. And it is a hoot. And it's just, it's full of carp. It's clear water. It's super technical. It's a lot of fun. In fact, we even have a carp fly fishing tournament, which is something that all the carp people come out of the closet to fish.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's a lot of fun. We even have carp on dry flies during that time. And we're going to be included in this circuit called Carp Comp this year, where there's another lake down in Southern California towards San Diego that's going to be included in the carp competition called Lake Henshaw. Which is called Lake Henshaw, which has grasshoppers on top water, and these carp come up and eat on the surface, which is a lot of fun. So they're going to do that one, then they're going to do Lake Isabella, and then we're going to Phoenix, and we're going to be working with AZ Fly Shop out of Phoenix. So it'll be like a little 3 destination area that we're going to go and have this carp competition, kind of like a bass competition, but it's going to be all carp. So we're looking forward to doing that.
That's cool. Yeah, at some point I want to do a carp show. I just haven't really figured out what that's going to look like yet. But folks, don't change the channel yet. I know you're trout fishermen out there for the most part, but we're going to talk carp fishing for just a minute. Guy, what's the secret to catching a carp? It sounds like they're really difficult fish. Like you say, they're kind of spooky and technical. What's the secret?
Yeah, so there's so many different things that carp do, and you kind of have to watch what they're doing. Sometimes they feed on the surface. Sometimes they're cruising underneath the water, and you can see them moving a little bit. Sometimes they're tailing, where they've got their tails up and their heads buried in the mud. And sometimes, they don't eat. And so trying to figure out, what they're doing, presentation, that sort of thing. You have to use all your trout skills to be able to catch a carp on a fly. And so, you have these fish that are super spooky. If you move in the wrong direction or they see you, they'll blow up. We call it, they blow up, and they create this huge mud explosion. And that usually signals about the other 40 or 50 fish to explode as well. So so you're pretty much done fishing for. Yeah, so you're pretty much done fishing for those. And you have to be stealthy. You have to be able to be stealthy, make a good cast. You have to present the fly in the way that they want it. You have to have the right tackle. All that stuff comes into play. Be able to fight pretty good sized fish, because they fight pretty good. All that stuff comes into play when fishing for carp and targeting carp. And the flies that we use, we're developing flies, and we have been for years, in these different fisheries where they don't make too big of a splash, but they'll sink. They'll ride with their hook up and look like a worm, stuff like that. Sometimes they are feeding on the surface for ants and grasshoppers and beetles. And so we'll target them when they're on the surface. It's a super fun game, and more and more people are starting to get into it, which is super fun. And we have them everywhere. That's the other cool thing.
Yeah, they are everywhere, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's super fun. And it's just, you don't have to travel super far. They could be in your local pond or your local urban lake, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Then there's certain kinds of carp that'll readily take a fly and certain kinds that won't. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, some different carp will come up and and look at your fly and say, nope, that's not
Okay.
going to work, Yeah, they're definitely picky at times. And sometimes you'll see them, for us trout fishermen, seeing a splash out there, where there's a bunch of commotion, you're wading out in the lake and you see a bunch of splashing and stuff going on. Well, most of the time, those are carp that won't eat, they're mating or they're spawning. And so you won't be able to catch those, but, being trout folks, we will cast to that, and be like, why aren't they eating this, So
Yeah.
just knowing their characteristics and how they work is a big part of the game for sure.
That's cool. It's a whole nother game. How about that?
Yeah, super fun.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, all right, let's switch gears here and talk about some trout fishing here in California. So I found you because I found your podcast. I was looking for somebody to do a show with on the Kern River, and I said, this guy has his own podcast. That's pretty cool. And
Awesome.
you sound great. It's a good podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The cool thing about podcasts is, my podcast, the Guy Gene's podcast, is I'm meeting all these cool people and learning. The whole thing about having a podcast too is you get to talk to all these people, but you get to learn, about their areas or what they do and how they did this, and create these friendships that last a lifetime. I'm just having a blast.
I'm the same way. I agree with you. It's a ton of fun. Your show number 89, I think. I mean, that's a lot of interviews,
Wow.
And
yeah, man, that's awesome.
It's a lot of fun. Huge news, folks. The #1 fishing app, and I'm talking Trout Routes here, has been updated to include the entire lower 48. That's 50,000 streams mapped and classified into 4 categories and 350,000 hand-curated public access points marked and ready for you to explore. There's nothing more exciting than finding that new trout stream or access point. I'm a huge fan of Trout Routes because they make it so easy. Say goodbye to stumbling around country roads looking for your next spot, because Trout Routes provides every detail you need for each stream, including public and private bridges, stream flows, trail access, where to park, camping opportunities, boat ramps, and more. No service, no problem. You can save maps for offline use. With Trout Routes, I've found dozens of new streams and access points I never would have known about. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for Trout Routes today on your Apple or Android phone. So talk about this part of California, because you're at the very end of the Sierras, right? And but what have you got down there fishing wise? Obviously, you got the Kern River. Is there anything else down that way?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the trout fishing if you want to, just to kind of go in that route as well. What's interesting about California, for one, is California has more native trout than any other state, which is kind of mind-boggling if you think about it. But California is home to 10 native trout, 10 different species of native trout. And what's really cool is that in our area, we have 3 of them. We have the golden trout, we have the Kern River rainbow, which are the bigger ones, and then we have the little Kern golden trout. And these are all different species in different areas of the Kern area. And then if you travel around the state, you have the Eagle Lake rainbow trout, you have the Warner Lake trout, you have the Paiute cutthroat, you have the coastal cutthroat. Of course, you have the steelhead, which are famous. You have the McLeod red-bound rainbow trout.
Yeah, famous.
And then you have little Houghton cutthroats. And it's like, so you have all these species of trout that you can go and target just in California, which is amazing. And so what's happened here in California is the California Fish and Wildlife has put on this program where if you catch 6 of the native trout of California, they will give you a poster that has Joseph Tomarelli's prints of these fish, which are gorgeous, and they will actually have your name on it. Such and such has caught 6 of California's 10 native trout,
nice.
and it'll have those specific trout on it. And it's really popular to do it in our area because you can get 3 of them done in a couple days, sometimes 2 or 3 days. And you got to travel and work for them a little bit, but people will come from all over the world actually to come catch the 3 in our area. The golden trout is probably the most popular, the most famous one. Our golden trout is in the South Fork of the Kern drainage area.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
Okay. Huh.
yeah, and so we have another fork called the South Fork of the Kern, and then we have these little tributary creeks that run into it. And the golden trout is considered by a lot of people the most beautiful trout in the world. It's golden yellow color and all that. The interesting thing about them is they don't get very big. Where we're at, we use a 1 weight to a 3 weight size rod. So if you like,
Oh, okay.
kind of small stream, dry fly fishing, that's all it is dry fly fishing. It's an amazing experience to be able to come up and catch a golden trout in its native waters.
That's awesome.
A lot of people catch golden trout all over different areas. They took golden trout from our area and they put them in Montana. They took golden trout and they put them in the Wind Range in Wyoming, I believe.
Sure.
So there are golden trout in other states, but the native golden trout come from the South Fork of the Kern, which is kind of neat.
So if you're catching a golden trout anywhere, it came from the Kern River.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other interesting thing is, I don't know if you've heard this too, but the rainbow trout that you find all over the states or even in other countries and stuff either come from the McCloud River or the Kern River, which is kind of interesting as well.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So lots to do, lots to fish. And you've got some warm water species, smallmouth, largemouth. We just talked about carp, right?
Yeah. So the interesting thing, my ultimate favorite, of course, I'm a bass fly fishing geek. So I love to guide and target and float for the lower Kern smallmouth in the lower Kern. So we have the North Fork coming down from Mt Whitney. We have the South Fork coming in from the Golden Trout Wilderness on basically the east side, coming into Lake Isabella. And then we have a tailwater, which is called the Lower Kern. We do have trout down there that are stocked, and they hold over in that and get pretty big down there. But we do have smallmouth and largemouth bass and spotted bass down in the Lower Kern. And the smallmouth were put in the Lower Kern in the 1940s, and they've had a self-sustaining population down there since then. And so probably about 70 miles of water from basically Lake Isabella Dam all the way down to Bakersfield. It's full of bass. And so you can do that as well. So you have, the cold water species and the warm water species that you can target in our area.
And how many miles of river are above Lake Isabella for trout fishermen?
So the North Fork is about 75 miles long, and
oh my gosh,
that's the North Fork. And then the South Fork is about the same, coming in on the other side. So, and then and then the Lower Kern's, 60 to 70 miles as well below that.
It's a lot of water.
Yeah. Take a lifetime to fish that.
Yeah, right? Yeah, you'd have to float fast.
The neat thing about the Upper Kern is that there's a section that goes up from my shop, Kern River Fly Shop. It goes up to this bridge. It's roadside access. So it's 20 miles of roadside access. And then above that is 50 miles of wild trout water where you have to either hike in or backpack in or horseback pack in.
Really? Oh, cool.
It's kind of a neat area where it doesn't get a lot of pressure. It keeps people from going in there because you got to work a little bit to get in there, but you're definitely rewarded when you go in there and catch those Kern River rainbows, which can get up to 20 inches or so.
That's really cool. And I'm looking on my Trout Routes app. They're one of my sponsors, and you can just jump on here and see exactly what you're talking about. The road ends, and then it's just all public all the way up, isn't it? From there.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, there's so many areas. If you're a fly fisherman that likes that wild trout, get away from all people, no cell range, none of that kind of stuff. If you're that type of person where you like to backpack in for 4 or 5 days and be totally secluded, then the Upper Kern wild trout section in the Golden Trout Wilderness is your place you want to go for sure.
Is there a lot of good trail systems up there?
Yeah, tons. Yeah, I want to tell you a pretty funny story. So I used to do trips in there where I'd stay in for sometimes like 14 days, and I'd take groups in there.
Nice.
By horseback, right? I would go way back in there, 20 miles by horseback, and then I would stay in there for 5 days, and then the packers would go out, and I'd stay in there by myself, for a couple of days until the next group came in. And I don't know if have you ever been in a place where you haven't had contact with another human being for 3 days, like no TV, no cell phone, no contact with another human for like 3 days. Have you ever experienced that?
I don't do well alone for very long. I like a couple buddies with me, but we have been back in the backcountry for a couple of days and not seen anyone, but I'm usually with somebody. Yeah. But I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird, as humans, we have to have that like human contact, right? So the third day I'm in there, packers have left. I'm in there. Third day, they're going to be coming in, later in the afternoon, and I haven't talked to anybody or anything for 3 days. And this poor backpacker's coming in by himself, and I'm like, hey, how you doing, man? I thought it was crazy, probably. I'm like, where are you going, man? What are you doing? Because you're like, you want that contact, or just to talk to somebody, it's just a weird thing.
Yeah, no, I totally. He's looking at you going, I think I just found Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah, it's like, who is this guy, man? Chill out.
Yeah, right. He's got a beard down to his knees, got a little tub of whiskey under his arm, he's been, yeah. That's funny. That sounds really awesome though, man. I kind of like dream about that kind of thing. I probably never do it, but that sounds really awesome.
Yeah, if people want to, they can go on YouTube and look up Sierra fly fishing and see like some of the trailers that show the Golden Trout Wilderness, fly fishing in the Golden Trout Wilderness. Just look up Sierra fly fishing. And I actually did a DVD back in the day. In 2008, I did a DVD of fly fishing called Sierra Fly Fishing Volume 2, Fly Fishing the Golden Trout Wilderness. And it's still out there. You can get it on Amazon. There's still some out there, but for the most part, they've sold out. But people are still selling them on there. So if people want to see and a really cool DVD,
check it out.
And get the experience, get that Sierra Fly Fishing Volume 2 for sure.
That's cool. Hey, anglers. Well, you've heard me talking about Angler's Coffee now for over a year now, and I have a question for you. Have you tasted it yet? If you have, then you know what I'm talking about. It's darn good coffee, isn't it? And if you're like me, tasting's believing. And believe me, this coffee tastes great. My wife and I are hooked on it. That's because Angler's Coffee offers an impressive spectrum of flavor profiles, so there's something for everyone, like their smooth medium roast elk hair caddis blend. Using beans from Central America and Indonesia with a perfect balance of body and aroma, the caddis blend gives creamy sweet tasting notes of milk chocolate and clove. It's a real crowd pleaser. Save 10% with a custom subscription like I did and pick the coffee blends you want delivered to your doorstep. If you're not 100% satisfied, they'll give you your money back, no questions asked. A percentage of each sale goes to some great nonprofit organizations that directly impact the fly fishing community. So put a smile on your face and give it a shot. That's anglerscoffee.com. Tasting's believing. Well, give us just, do your best to tell us what does it look like up there? I mean, I imagine it's gorgeous. You're at the base of Mt Whitney, so to speak. I mean, you're above tree line sometimes, I'm assuming. What's it look like up there?
Yeah, so it has a pretty fast gradient. It's a super popular whitewater destination. It's a very, world famous whitewater destination. When the water comes up, the rapids are amazing. But it's a freestone stream, and it starts up 9,000-10,000 feet or higher, and then by the time it gets down to where I'm at in the Kernville, California area, we're roughly about 2,000 feet. And so in that, that 65 miles or so, it goes from that gradient down, pretty steep. But there's flat areas and meadow type looking areas, but it's got pocket water, it's got riffles, big giant pools. It's beautiful, man. It's a beautiful crystal clear water. It's what us fly anglers dream about. That's a good way to put it.
That's awesome.
Compared to other streams, any freestone stream like the Big Thompson in Colorado is very similar. Any of those kind of freestone streams that are uncontrolled and not below a dam or anything like that, that's kind of the vibe that you'll experience.
From a crowded standpoint, how's it looking? Does it get super crowded?
Well, so what's neat about it is, from Mt Whitney down is the Sequoia National Park. And so you've got, I don't know, maybe 20 miles in the park there that is like, there's no one. Then it goes into the Golden Trout Wilderness. The river flows into the Golden Trout Wilderness, and there's another 20 miles. And so you won't see anybody in there either.
Pretty secluded.
And then in the roadside section, which is called the 20-mile section from basically Kernville, my fly shop, the Kern River Fly Shop, upstream 20 miles is roadside. And that's where you will see most of the people just fishing on roadside there. Because it's easy access. It's all free. There is no, it's all public access. The whole entire river is public access. There is no fee or private water or anything like that. It's all private. It's all public.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. How do the north and the south forks, are they pretty similar or do they fish differently?
So the South Fork is kind of more like it has like kind of a spring creek type of vibe, but it also has that freestone kind of vibe too as well. So there's a huge meadows where it just meanders through these giant meadows. I mean, we're talking like 10 miles of meadow where it just meanders through. So if you like that kind of, the river's the South Fork of the Kern's probably about 15 feet to 20 feet wide at the most. And it just meanders real slow through a lot of different meadows, and then it'll drop off through some cascading riffles and runs, and then it'll drop into another meadow. It's like that kind of a vibe that goes on there. It's that's for golden trout, and that is all dry fly with a dropper, a rubber-legged stimulator size 10 or 12, which is super fun. For us guys getting into our 50s, having those bigger flies to be able to put the tippet through the guys of the hook is kind of nice,
I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, and so on those places, the flies are typically a little bit bigger that we use up on the South Fork. Those fish like to eat grasshoppers and stuff through the summertime, and that's when we're usually up there, is in the summertime and the fall.
Okay.
This year, since we have a 300% snowpack, I don't think we'll be able to get up there until August in the South Fork because
wow,
there's so much snow. But so up there we also have brown trout, and so we have non-native brown trout in the South Fork of the Kern, and there's been a lot of controversy with that because the brown trout's favorite food is golden trout, and so the brown trout in the South Fork of the Kern love to eat the golden trout. So you'll see the brown trout are a little bit bigger than the golden trout in most cases. So you'll be, sometimes you're just sitting there on the bank of the South Fork of the Kern, and you look in the water. Maybe you're eating your lunch or something, and you're just sitting on the bank, and you'll see a golden trout sitting there. feeding or whatever, and all of a sudden a big brown trout will come out from an undercut and just inhale that golden trout.
You've seen that? Is that right? You've seen that happen, huh?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Wow, that's cool.
Many times. They've created these barriers in the South Fork of the Kern. One's called the Schaefer Barrier, one's called the Templeton Barrier, and they're these giant like dams that are supposed to keep the brown trout from migrating upstream. And for the most part, they've worked. They're not letting the brown trout migrate upstream into the golden trout habitat. But in some of the areas, where below those dams, you will see tons of brown trout, and there's a lot of golden trout too, and they're just kind of cohabitating. But the brown trout are definitely dominating. And companies like Orvis and Cal Trout and Trout Unlimited have spent a bunch of money trying to eradicate the brown trout out of there with little success. Just unfortunately,
really,
once introduced, the brown trout will find a way, I think.
Yeah, no kidding. And then the North Fork, is that a little more technical fishing, smaller flies? What's that like?
Yeah. So we go through the seasons there, so I'll start in January. So January, February, we're typically using small flies, black fly larva type flies, horrible 22s and 24s, oh my gosh. So we're using, and that's kind of what we have to use, those kinds of things, those kinds of flies, those sizes. Then we get into March, and we start having this really cool hatch called a March Brown. And we start getting the mayfly March Brown is a little bit bigger, and so we start getting a little bit bigger flies. Then April, May, we have the salmon fly hatch.
Okay.
So we go from the tiniest flies to the biggest flies, like pretty rapidly. And so we'll use the big stone flies or salmon fly type dry flies on the surface because the fish are gorging themselves on the salmon fly hatch. Then we have yellow sallies through the season. Caddis are starting to start going through the summer, and then we have all the terrestrials, all the grasshoppers and beetles and ants. Then we have through the fall, we still have the October caddis, which is awesome. We have other stone flies as well, and mayflies all through December. And blue-wing olives are super popular as well. So we have all these different hatches going on throughout the season, throughout the different seasons for sure. It's a pretty amazing fishery. The lower Kern below Lake Isabella, we're fishing for the bass down there. We're using bait fish style patterns, topwater poppers like frogs. We'll use polywog style patterns for all those fish down there, which are pretty good in size too down there.
Okay. And so you, as a fly designer, tell me a little bit about some of the flies that you've come up with. I'm assuming some of these are specific for your area. Is that right?
Yeah. So I found that salmonoids, trout, salmon, steelhead, they like the colors, chartreuse and pinks and reds. And, over the years in our river, we've discovered that those colors are like super important. Whether we fish, the natural colors, like the stonefly colors, the yellow sallies, stonefly nymphs and stuff like that. We'll also put on attractor style patterns at the same time. So we'll have, a natural on, and then we'll put on a attractor below that or above it, off a tag or underneath an indicator, that sort of thing. Or we'll put a dropper underneath the dry fly, and we'll have some kind of attractor underneath there. Okay. And these fish, the Kern River rainbows especially, love shiny, bright, chartreuse, red, pink is a big one for us. They love the color, anything with a little bit of pink in it. So we've come up with different patterns. One of the patterns that I've come up with is called the Kern Emerger, and it's basically like a hare's ear, but we'll put for the wing casing different color wing casings, like whether it's pink, yellow, or red. instead of the natural wing casing that we have. So it's very similar to that.
Yeah.
And I'll definitely send pictures so people can see that.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So we have some patterns that some of the other guides in the shop have come up with. Some friends of mine called the Bueller Brothers that guide for me have come up with some great patterns. One's called the Slim Shiny, and it's kind of like just like it's just like it described. It's real slim and it's shiny, and but it's got like tinsel wrapped around it. It's really simple, super simple fly, and they may put a little bit of pink wrapped around by the head there on the collar.
Was it a streamer or is it a nymph?
Kind of like a Frenchie, kind of a little bit.
Okay, all right, so it's a nymph, all right.
Yeah, tied with a kind of a jig style hook, and it bounces on the bottom. And it's a super popular one. People love that.
Okay.
And then we have another one called a tungsten yellow Sally that is probably our number one fly. It's a golden stone fly. We have golden stone flies and brown stone flies and squallas, and black stone flies in our river in the North Fork. So stone fly type patterns are super popular on our river. So you'll see a lot of in my fly shop when you walk in, you're like, oh my God, look at all these stone flies.
Oh, really? Okay.
The bins are just all stone fly nymphs, so you'll see a lot of people using those on the river.
Yeah, nice. And what style of fishing are you guys doing up there? Anything in particular, or does kind of all styles work, or what works well?
Yeah, we at the fly shop we teach all kinds of different styles, and from European nymphing to dry droppers to fishing underneath an indicator to streamer fly fishing, but they all work. Just depends on what the angler would like to do for that day, or they have a particular style that they like. On the Kern, there's great water to do the Czech nymphing style, European style nymphing. There's great water for that. Some people like to fish that way, real short line, and work up through the pockets in the pools.
Sure.
Some people like to fish the big dry fly, like a big red fuzzy wuzzy size 6 or 8 on the surface, and then drop down a couple of nymphs below that. So that's super popular, and fish upstream doing that. And then some people will turn around and fish streamers, walk downstream and cast down and across and try to get fish on the swing, kind of almost like steelhead swing, very similar to that. So that's a super popular way to fish the Kern as well.
No kidding. And like, how wide is the Kern? I'm sure it varies, but give me a sense from that water way up in the high country on down to your shop. Like, what's the CFS? How wide is it?
Okay, so we just had a huge event just happen. The river usually, when we're fishing it, it's between 300 and 1,000 CFS. And I was talking about how much rain and snow we've been getting.
Yeah.
We just had an event where the river got up to 46,000 CFS.
Holy smokes!
Just flooded the town. Unbelievable.
Oh
took out trailers and stuff, and it was crazy.
I think I saw you guys on my Weather Channel app. They were showing the Kern River flooding your little town.
Unbelievable, man. Just annihilated the campgrounds and stuff in town. They're all cleaning up right now, getting ready for the season, but it was unbelievable. And what happened was, we had this snow come in at lower elevations, 3,000-4,000 feet. And then we had this warm rain come and land on that snow all the way up to, Mt Whitney, and just melted it all. And it all just came down. And that's what happened.
Wow. I hope everything's okay.
But to kind of answer your question, the normal CFS is between 3 and 1,000 that we like to fish the upper Kern. And to kind of give you an idea of that, that's probably, I don't know, 30 to 40 feet across, sometimes wider, sometimes narrower.
Okay. That's great size.
Yeah. So that's the North Fork.
Is that super weightable, guy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. People love to weight it. We even float it at certain times of the year in pontoons, 2-man pontoons. We'll float clients down but it has to be above 500 to do that. But it's super wadeable when the water gets down in the 500, 300 to 500 CFS, which is probably going to be in the August, September, maybe. I don't even know because we have this record year. I'm not sure it will go under 1,000 this year.
Oh my gosh!
Which will be actually really cool for the fishery.
Yeah.
What happens with the river? You know, all these people are like, oh my God, what's going to happen to the fish? And you know, all this kind of stuff. And the fish have been going through this for thousands and thousands of years, and they just survive, right? The other interesting thing is once we have these big floods, and it's like a big cleanup. You know, it like cleans out the river. It moves the rocks around. It puts sediment on the banks, new plants, new trees, new bugs, more bugs. It really makes the river system healthy, in my opinion. We just have to go through it right now, where it just kind of scours everything and just kind of, oh my gosh, look at we're having all these trees, but you know, give it a few months and all the plants start coming back, and it just turns into this really neat place.
I bet with 46,000 CFS, man, that's going to look like a new river to all your guides when they go up there. You know,
oh, totally.
I got to learn
New spots,
learn,
man.
you got to learn it all over again. You know,
Yeah.
so well, you know, I wanted to ask you about you starting this fly shop. So, am I right? Like, there was no fly shop up in this area until you came along. Is that right?
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I was, and you know, we were talking about my ska band. I was a musician for about 15 years through the 90s there. My band was kind of like, you know, coming to an end. And so, I mean, I was still playing and stuff, but we kind of peaked out, and my music career was kind of coming to a halt. And so I was like, okay, now what am I going to do? And so
Fish.
my other love, of course, was fly fishing. But the funny story is, man, I was also, while I was playing music, I was a sales rep for a company called Wrigley. And
Wrigley.
you know, Wrigley gum, you know,
like the gum. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, Wrigley gum. And so it was cool. It was kind of like a part-time job, but I was a sales rep, and I had all the liquor stores and all the grocery stores in the Ventura, Santa Barbara area in California. And one day I pulled up to a Vaughn's that we have out here, a big grocery store, and I parked a car. And I'm kind of like in a suit and tie, you know, and I'm getting ready to make a call and go talk to the managers, you know, in the grocery store.
Yeah.
And these two homeless guys come up, and they're like, "Hey man, we'll wash your windows on your car for $7." And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, man. So I gave them $7, and I went into the grocery store, and I looked out the grocery store window, and I see them run off, you know, like they didn't clean my windows on my car.
Yeah.
And I'm like, those guys, you know, so I was all mad and whatnot. And then I got to thinking, you know, like, wow, these guys are making $7 per car. Oh, that's pretty good, man. You know, this is like, you know, 30 years ago or something. And I'm like, wow, those guys are making so far. If they did like 5 cars an hour, it's like $35 an hour. Hey man, that's more than I make. You know, I was thinking
selling gum.
I'm like, dang. So I started thinking about it, and I was like, wow, so washing windows, man. So long story short, I started a window washing company.
How about from that experience, you got a business out of it? How about that?
I did, yeah. So these guys like totally inspired me to think about like, what? Okay, so what I did was, and I promise I'm going to lead into the fly shop here in a second. Yeah. So what I did was I said to myself, okay, so if I make a flyer and I go around to the beach community and I hand out a flyer to every single house and I walk around for 8 hours and I hand out a flyer to each house, and I take 8 hours to do it, and I get one job out of that, that's worth it. And so I did that. I made some flyers and I went around to the houses, and I ended up getting like 5 houses out of it, you know, and I
Yeah.
schedule them and stuff. I didn't know how to wash windows. And I'm like, oh God, now I gotta figure out how to do this, you know?
Minor
So
problem.
anyways, so I figured out how to wash windows, and I watched some videos, and I ended up having this window washing business for about 7-8 years. And I ended up having a crew, and I ended up having all these houses and like restaurants and all these things all over the Ventura, Santa Barbara area. I was doing construction cleanup and all these things, right? Then one day I was up on top of a building, and I'm washing a window, and I'm like thinking to myself, is this really what I want to do with my life? You know, and
Yeah.
not that washing windows is bad. It's a great job. There's always work and this and that, but I needed more, I guess. Even though I created this it's a business that's still going today.
Nice.
I ended up running into a guy who he wanted to buy the business. And so I said, okay. So I ended up selling the business, which gave me enough capital to eventually buy product for my fly shop. So I'm going to fast forward to my fly shop. So in the meantime, I was playing jazz gigs. I was playing piano with a saxophone player. And then I was driving up to the Kern. I wasn't living up there at the time. And I was sleeping in the back of my truck, and I was guiding, 1 or 2 days on the weekends, sleeping in the back of my truck. And I'd drive back to Ventura and do my jazz piano gigs with the saxophone player. And then I'd drive up there, and I kept going back and forth. And then one day I was driving back through Kernville, and I saw a for rent sign on this building, and I like got out of my truck, and I went up and I looked through the window, and it was this old thrift store that had been there for like 30 years, but apparently the person who owned the thrift store, this lady, had passed away, and so now the owners were going to be renting it out. And I looked in the window, and I'm like, oh, this would be a cool place to have a fly shop.
That thought just occurred to you, just like right there. I need a fly shop.
Yeah,
right here.
Yeah. And so I called the phone number, and the people are like, "Oh, fly shop. What is that?" You know?
Yeah, flies.
We're
bugs.
Yeah. There was no fly shop in Kernville. There was nothing. And so eventually I said, "Hey, would you mind if I came over to your house? I'm going to show you what fly fishing is. I'm going to show you." So I brought all over my vials of bugs, stoneflies and vials, and gave them this like presentation to these people that own the building. And I said, "This is what I want to do," and blah, blah, blah. And they're, okay, well, we'll think about it. Well, about a week later, they called me and said that they were going to give that space to me. And so I'm like, awesome. So it took me about 6 months or so to get everything organized. And I had just sold that building. I'm sorry, I just had sold the business.
Yeah.
So I had capital to buy some, waiters and boots and, just bare
inventory.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember, opening up, and I couldn't believe I had a really good day my first day, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And that was coming on 21 years ago.
So you had customers on your first day. I mean, you opened your doors and people walked in.
Yeah. Oh, it was awesome. And then I was guiding as well. So I was doing, guiding, and I was working the shop and all that kind of stuff. So it was a lot at first, and then I just kind of kept building it up, and now we've got a bunch of guides working at the shop, and fly fishing school, and it's
congratulations.
Yeah, created a cool community. Started a fly fishing club called the Southern Sierra Fly Fishers up there,
Okay.
and it's done. It's the club's got the McKenzie Cup, which is like a really kind of high honor for fly fishing clubs in the nation.
Nice.
So they've done really well, and it's become this really cool fly fishing community.
That's awesome.
Sorry for the long story.
No, I love it. That's a great story. I bet that inspires some people who are in a job they're not thrilled about, and there's a path maybe to something better.
I talk about that on podcasts and talked to a lot of people that, if you're passionate about whatever you do, and
Yeah.
you will be successful. It's just the way it is. If you love what you do and you focus on it and don't listen to anybody. I mean, I had everybody telling me that I wasn't going to succeed, and I just didn't listen. I just kept moving forward and say, obstacle, I figure it out.
Wow. That's fantastic. I mean, you're into a lot of different things, right? I mean, you start this fly shop, you design flies, you're in a band, you teach surf fishing, right? You've got your podcast, you're winning awards. I mean, like you're killing it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, where did this inspiration and this passion come from? Is that kind of like were your parents super passionate people, or like where did that come from?
I don't know, man. You know, uh, my parents were teachers, were elementary school teachers for 40 years. Both of them taught 40 years. And, I don't know. I just have that, I'm still trying to do other things. I love creating something out of nothing. So I like doing that kind of stuff, whether it's, business or conservation or whatever it is. It's just, it inspires me to do other things and meet other people and learn, basically.
Yeah, that's great. So, what was your childhood like growing up in Ventura, with two school teacher parents?
So, my life, uh, as a kid growing up in Ventura, I was a surfer kid, and so my just I guess it depends on where you grow up. You could be a snowboarder kid or whatever it is. Wherever you grow up. But I was immersed in the surfing world at a young age, about 11 years old, and started doing that at a young age and got into competition surfing and sponsorships and all that stuff at a very early age. And I was always super competitive, um, whether it's
Okay.
whether it's in business or whatever it is. I like to try to do better always. And so surfing was a good one for me because of you have to be an individual. You don't have to rely on anybody else. It's you and the waves and trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I was listening to your video, one of your videos on your website, and I thought I was kind of curious, like about like the culture that you're trying to build there in Kernville, around
Yeah.
fly fishing. Because I love what you said. You said there are no rules in fly fishing, but there might be a better way. And I think you're talking about how you teach, but I feel like a lot of people feel like there are a lot of rules in fly fishing. Like oh, you got to do it this way, or something bad's going to happen. What do you think about that?
Oh, God, great question, man. I love it. So check this out, man. So I come from the life of no rules, and there's always a better way. And so I used
Love
to
it.
I used to do these hosted trips to Montana, and I'd hosted these different lodges and stuff. One of the things I tell my guys is never say never, ever. Never say never, ever. If somebody wants to try something, say absolutely, let's do it, right? So we're up in Montana. I've got 10 people up in Montana, and there's different guides there. I'm actually guiding too, so I'm rowing a drift boat, but there's 4 other boats or whatever. And one of the guides is been guiding the river for a long time, and it was kind of surprising to me that he said what he did. But he said to me, I was showing him my box of flies and all these different flies that we use and stuff, and different. Oh, those will never work here. That'll never work here. That'll never work here. That'll never work here. He kept saying to me about all these different flies, and I'm like, really? And so as I'm going down the river, I'm tying different flies on for my clients and customers, and I'm saying, let's try these. Let's try these flies and see what happens. Boom, sure enough, boom, and
Oh, really?
the other guy isn't catching anything. And what are you guys using? I'm using those flies you said that wouldn't work.
Something different.
Yeah. So that's one of the things is like another time I was guiding this guy from New Zealand. And he, we're fishing streamers and stuff. And he's like, "Hey, Nate, you mind if I try one of my flies?" And I'm like, "Sure. What do you got?" And he whips out his box, and he's got these flies. They're called booby flies. I don't know if you've seen them in Fly Fishing magazine, but they're like
I have not.
flies with these big giant beads on both sides of the eye of the hook, right? So they look like giant eyes. They call them booby flies. And then so it looks like a woolly bugger with these giant eyes on the front, right? And they call them booby flies. And I look at it in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, these things are, I'm like, I don't know about these things, that's what I'm thinking in my mind. And we put it on there, boom, fish right first cast, And so that was my lesson, like, you never say never. Never say never, always be willing to, as a guy, always be willing to try other people's flies and check things out,
I mean, don't you think sometimes that you're fishing, like you're in Montana and you're fishing some stream that the fish are seeing 1,000 flies a day, maybe on some of those, not all of them, but some of them. And if you throw something, I was just steelhead fishing yesterday up in Michigan, and this guy was super, particular about these flies we're using. And he's like, we design our own flies, and they just look different than anything else that these other fishermen are throwing at them. And sometimes, a steelhead's seeing 1,000 flies a day in some of these rivers, and just throw something different. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes that's the key.
Absolutely. And that's a neat thing about fly fishing. And I say there's no rules. I got into competition fly fishing there for a little bit, and
oh, cool.
Was fly fishing in tournaments and stuff, and the amount of different flies that some of these competitors have, and you can learn from and just see in the development of some of the flies, and is unbelievable. Just some of the flies that are coming out nowadays is incredible.
Like, how many thousands of patterns are out there that nobody knows about except for the one guy who's tying them and not telling anybody about them? And there's thousands, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they don't want to tell anybody, because they got an edge with this fly, Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And they probably do.
It was cool, like in some of the competition stuff that I did, afterwards, after we got done with our heat or a session or whatever, a lot of the guys would actually like talk about the flies that they were using. Like, "Oh, this is what I was using, man." "No way, you were using that thing." And it would be like something, you'd be like, "Oh, that's awesome, man." And what were you using? "Oh, I was using this." And they'd be like, "Oh, that's cool." And you would share these flies and knowledge, the amount of knowledge that when fly fishing competitors get together, and the amount of knowledge that comes together in one place is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Because they come from North Carolina, we come from California, they come from Utah, they come from Montana, they come from wherever.
Yeah.
And all these people come with all these different techniques, and it's pretty cool. I love it.
Do you have like a fly tying table in your shop where guys can just sit down and just tie flies and shoot the bull?
We do next door. So I have a fly fishing pool room basically next door to my shop.
Okay.
So we do a lot of fly tying over there. And there's a refrigerator with beverages in that. So there's a lot of that goes on too.
Okay. I got you. Well, there's a fly shop at the base of Rock Creek in Montana. It's called the Mercantile. And you walk in there, and the first time I went in there was years ago, and there was just a big round table right in the middle of the fly shop. And it's piled high with fly tying material, like completely unorganized, just everything just piled, like whatever you need is somewhere buried in the middle of that round table. You can tie anything. And anybody could just sit down and tie flies. And I thought, man, I'd just love to hang out here and just talk to these people and watch them and see what they're tying and talk to them about, fishing and tying flies. And like you said, I mean, there's just so much knowledge that comes together, particularly like if you're at a place like the Kern River or Rock Creek in Montana,
So neat. Yeah.
All right. I was going to ask you just a little bit more about the Kern River. I'm curious, how selective are these fish? Like, are you having to go all the way down to, 5 and 6X sometimes with these fish, or tell me about that?
Sometimes when they're focused on the surface stuff, And some of the emergers, just kind of subsurface, they're pretty selective in different times of the year when they're focused on the hatches and stuff like that. But most of the time you can drift through as long as you get a good drift and you have something that looks similar to what's going on underneath the water. You'll get hit. It's not too difficult. I always tell people too, like, if you can catch fish on the Kern River, you can catch fish anywhere, because it can be technical and it can be challenging and difficult. And there's a lot of people that come into my shop, after a day's fishing, and they're like, "Oh man, I only caught like 3 fish," and then somebody else will come in, "Dude, I tore it up today. I caught 30 fish,"
Yeah.
And you're like, so
quiet.
it just depends on the skill level as well. And
what are you noticing about the top anglers? And we talked a little bit about this earlier, but like, what do you think the top anglers are doing that maybe like the guy that only caught 3 wasn't?
with our area, the upper Kern, it's just time on the water. A lot of people will go to these other streams, and there's lots of fish. It's a matter of just getting the right fly and just getting a good drift. With the Kern, it's time on the water, learning. I always tell people their first time up is get a guide. Go with the guide for a half a day and just kind of see what's going on. See the flies they're using, see what techniques they're using, and it just makes all the difference in the world. And some people won't do that, and they get frustrated.
Right. That now they're, instead of getting dialed in a day or half a day, they got to spend 3 or 4 days to learn.
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't even learn what that guy could teach them in a half a day. Probably wouldn't even get close, but they might get a little bit better.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let me ask you this, just because we're kind of closing down here. What is like the one thing that you want people to know about this fishery?
Well, I think, there's a variety. If you come up to Kernville, and you're going to probably, if people come to visit, they're going to either fly into Los Angeles or Bakersfield. And from Bakersfield, it's an hour drive. From Los Angeles, about a 3-hour drive. But you're going to find that the fishery is diverse. You've got 3 different native trout, but you've also got brown trout in the systems. Then you've got the Lake Isabella, which is variety of trout, warm water species as well. And then you have the lower Kern, which is a whole nother fishery in itself, plus all the tributaries that come into both forks of the Kern. So there's hundreds of miles of small streams.
Oh, cool.
So people can imagine, we have the giant sequoias where we're at. So if you can imagine the biggest trees in the world and a stream that's nearby, that's kind of what it's like, big pine trees.
Yeah.
With the giant sequoias, not too far away.
So I could be fishing the Kern River and looking at giant sequoias?
Well, there are streams around the giant sequoias that they're up a little bit higher.
Okay.
I would say, they're up in the 8,000 foot range. So they're up on this area called the Western Divide Highway. But yeah, you can definitely see the Kern from the giant sequoias.
Okay.
Which is kind of neat. It's a big canyon, big vista that looks off, and you can see it. But yeah, it's kind of like that. So it kind of gives you an idea of what the terrain looks like.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Guy, I'm curious, you've spent a lot of years fly fishing. It sounds like you hit it pretty hard. You own a fly shop, and I'm sure fly fishing means a lot to you. And I'm kind of curious, like, what has fly fishing taught you through these years?
Great question. Thank you. So fly fishing has taught me all kinds of things. I've had people that have fished their last days with me. As a guide, they've asked, like, "Guy, I've only got a few months to live, but I want to fish with you one last time."
Wow,
or
really?
Float me down the river one last time. I want to catch a fish one last time, or whatever. And that's happened a lot. So it's taught me that. Taught me empathy. Huh. It's taught me to slow down, not go so fast, and enjoy every moment that you have, with friends. A lot of times when I go fishing, I like to watch my friends fish and laugh and see them
really?
catch a fish. I love that aspect of it. I've met some of my best friends through the fly shop. Immediately when they walk into the fly shop, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to be friends with this guy. I know for sure.
You just know. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You just know it right off the bat. So I've met some of the coolest people, some of the most interesting people through fly fishing, and it just keeps getting better. It keeps happening to me. As I keep going on with my fly fishing career, I just keep meeting all these cool people, and like you, man, this podcast. I would have never been on this podcast. So it's just that kind of stuff. I love it.
Yeah, no, it sure is. It's kind of a way of life. I mean, I think it's more than just something you kind of have fun with. It gets in your blood. I think there's a chromosome in people like you and me and a lot of other people.
Yeah, I had friends like, "What? You're going fishing again?"
yeah. What's wrong with that? You got a problem with that?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I took Wednesday off in the middle of the week, and people at my company, "You're doing what?" I'm going steelhead fishing.
I told myself, from now on, I'm gonna go to 2 places I've never been before, and different and fish different species that I've never fished for before.
That's great.
And explore. I mean, why not? Last year I went to Ishlack and went to the place called the X Flats Lodge. Oh my God!
Where's that?
Had a great time. Yeah, Ishlack is in Mexico, kind of like almost to Belize. And
sure.
It's permit, bonefish, Jack Crevalle, all those kind of species, tarpon, all that. And I had never done that before, so I did that last year, and that was, oh my God, it was awesome. So that kind of stuff, that's the kind of cool thing about fly fishing is you can go do all these other cool experiences as well,
Yeah, right. I'll tell you what's on my bucket list is a GT, a giant trevally. Have you ever caught one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I haven't done that one yet. No.
Yeah, me neither.
Amazing.
All right. I had a guy, sometimes I pull listeners on my show, and I had a guy that, I never know what they're going to say. And I get this guy from the UK who was on my Instagram, and I just reached out to him and said, hey, you want to be on the show? And, he gets on the show, and he's, this thick British accent. And it turns out this guy's fished all over the world, the Seychelles, all over the Caribbean, and he works in a Ford plant in London, right? They're making F-150s in London. I didn't know that.
Oh, wow.
And he said that catching a giant trevally is like throwing your line out there in a semi truck, hooking the back bumper of a semi truck. It's just this jerk,
awesome.
And it's like a serious fish. So anyway, I thought, I don't know if I'm going to the Seychelles to do that anytime soon, but that's on the bucket list. So we can dream, right?
Man. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So, all right, food questions. I always end my show with this. So I want to know your favorite restaurant for the hungry, thirsty angler at the end of the day. That's question 1. And the next question is, what's your favorite shore lunch to make your customers?
Oh, okay, cool. Great question. So answer the first one is called the Kern River Brewery. Kern River Brewery is kind of a cool story. It's very similar to mine, where the guy had a dream of starting a brewery. He was brewing his beers in his garage and ended up opening up a brewery. His beers were so good that he's become, world famous. Kern River Brewery. Nice. He's won all kinds of awards, gold medals at the Great American Beer Fest, all from he started out in his garage. So if you guys come up, make sure to go to the Kern River Brewery.
Sounds good.
And there's all kinds of beers there that they brew. It's a small brewery. It employs about 70 people, I think, but it distributes all over the place. And it's kind of a cool. So we have a fly shop and a brewery and some hotels.
There you go, in Kernville, huh?
Oh, that's very important.
What else do you need? You got it all, and a river.
Yes. And then what was the second question?
Shore lunch, favorite shore lunch.
Oh, yeah. So let's see. I've done quite a few of those. So like sometimes I'll cook chicken quesadillas. Sometimes I'll do bratwurst. Sometimes I just do sandwiches on the shore.
Okay.
But it's all done, with nice tablecloth and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
so that's part of the deal, man. Is like trying to make a good lunch for everybody. Some people when I go on guide trips say, I don't want to eat.
Just keep fishing.
I just want to fish. Yeah, I just want to fish. And I'm like, well, we got to eat, man. We got to eat something.
Yeah, I got a break. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite memories were fishing with my dad in Montana, and seeing him sitting there at this little fold out table, and a little fold out chairs with a little table, just like you're describing, with a tablecloth, and he's just loving life. My dad was he's a pretty wound up guy. I mean, he was kind of a corporate guy, and to see him relax like that was just just a joy. Just see him like chatting with the guide, and just having a great time. It's those shore lunches, man. You should stop. You should stop and just do that. I don't know.
Absolutely.
I mean, I get you want to keep fishing, but it's another aspect of the trip, of the experience, to sit down and just sit and talk for a little bit, have lunch, have a meal.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know.
Super
That's
important.
how I feel about it. So anyway, well, Guy, man, thanks for being on the show. You did a great job.
Thanks, man. That was a blast. I really appreciate it.
Sure, you bet. All right. So how can people get in touch with you, or maybe book a trip?
So KernRiverFlyShop.com is the website. My podcast is GuyEugene'sPodcast.com.
Gotcha.
If you want to listen to some more stories.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And then StonefliesMusic.com if people want to check out my band. I've got a couple videos that we've done. Actually, one of the videos for the songs we shot in the fly shop.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, so the cinematography for that is really good. It's on the river. It's a concert that we do it in the shop, and then we show the concert on the river too. So it's kind of a neat, people will be able to see what the river looks like for sure.
Okay.
And so yeah, there you have it. Oh, and then I've got at Kern River Fly Shop on Instagram and on Facebook.
And folks, thank you for listening. And Guy, I wish you extraordinary success in all your adventures to follow. And we'll be sure to post all that Guy's information on our Destination Angler show notes and pictures of his top fly picks on our Facebook and Instagram pages, along with some really cool pictures of this area. It's a beautiful area. You can DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at shake50@gmail.com. Hey, if you like the show, please share it with a buddy. As always, our music is by our Brothers Fountain, an awesome little band out of Colorado. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.